Agent Client Protocol, or ACP, has the potential of becoming the new MCP. This new protocol standardizes communication between code editors, or IDEs, and coding agents. So what exactly is the problem it's trying to solve? Every major company is trying to release their own CLI-based coding agents. Now, these CLI-based coding agents do have support for some of the coding IDEs, but in most cases, it's a hack rather than a native support. This new protocol is trying to standardize that. So you're going to be able to see, for example, diffs in an IDE that are made by the coding agent. Let me show you this in action, and later on I'll show you why this is significant and how does the protocol work. So this is Zed, an open source IDE. It has support for Agent Client Protocol. So right now it supports both Claude Code and Gemini CLI, and they are adding support for new agents. So let's say if we select Gemini CLI, you're going to see that it acts very similar to a simple coding agent, for example, that present in cursor. You don't really see any other CLI based tool anymore. And let's ask it, create a Python file that implements a star search algorithm. Now, when we send the command, it feels like you are just interacting directly within the IDE. The beauty of Agent Client Protocol is that it is IDE and agent agnostic. So any IDE that is going to support or add support for this protocol will act in exactly the same way. So here, Gemini CLI came up with a code. We are going to allow for it to edit. And in here, you see that it created a new Python file. But you can actually see all the diffs directly within the IDE. Now, Gemini CLI has support for VS Code, where you can integrate it Gemini CLI, and then you see the diffs in VS Code, but it's not universal. But the goal or the idea behind this protocol is that it's going to become universal. Let's say we accept all these changes, but now we want to continue working on this file, but we want to use Claude Code instead. So here I can just click on Claude Code. It is going to create another thread within the same IDE. And now I can say add comments to, and the rest of the functionality works in a similar way that works in Claude Code. So we can just reference to a specific file. We're going to send in the request, and Claude Code will be able to make updates to the file. Again, it's asking us for permission, so we're going to allow it. And you can actually see all the diffs directly within IDE again. So there's a very tight integration between the IDE and coding agent through Agent Client Protocol. Again, it's agnostic to both the coding agent and the IDE. And that's the beauty, because even though if there is a support for Claude Code in Cursor, it's a hack that Anthropic had to implement. But now, in this case, the communication is going to be standardized. Okay, so who is behind this? This protocol was created by Zed Industries, who are also the creators of Zed IDE. That's the open source coding integrated development environment that we saw in conjunction with the Google Gemini team. So at the moment, it supports Gemini CLI and Claude Code out of the box. If you run it for the first time, you will have to log in, but it also has the ability to support any other custom agents as well. In that case, you will need to just create a JSON file with this specific structure. So you're going to have the agent server, then what exactly the command it's going to use, and then there is an index.js file which is going to point to that specific agent. And the beauty is that it's an open source protocol. So hopefully more players will get involved and make this protocol better. But the idea is that we want to minimize integration overhead. So right now, every new agent editor combination requires custom work. With this protocol, similar to MCP, you take that away. And also, agent work with only limited number of available editors that we have seen. Cursor does not have support for all of the coding agents. Same is the case with VS Code and Windsurf. And also, sometimes there are developer lock-ins. So choosing an agent often means accepting their available interfaces. But with ACP, you take that away. Now you can potentially integrate any coding agent within the IDE of your choice. So a code editor can talk to any agent through standard I/O. So what exactly is this under the hood? It's a JSON RCP protocol that lets any code editor talk to any coding agent. So you can just plug and play. And the idea is that it takes away friction. So the editor with the first class UI to the coding agent, that means you'll be able to see live diffs, multi-buffer reviews, navigation, and everything. Here's a very simple architecture. So you have the client, that is your code editor. And then on the other side, you have the agent, very similar to the MCP protocol. Once the communication is established between the two, then the code editor is being controlled by the coding agent. Here's a more detailed flow. So this is transport agnostic. You use commonly standard input-output operations to a sub-process. The editor starts the agent and exchange structured requests and responses. And then the agent proposes actions that will be navigate, edit, run tool, etc. Now, you might be thinking, how exactly is this different from MCP? So ACP controls the communication between the editor and coding agent. That means that it gives the agent the ability to control UI components or control channels. For example, edit, navigation, reviews, diffs. Those are directly the communication between the agent and the editor. On the other hand, MCP is agent and tool communication. So it's a standard way to expose tools or context to your agent. So essentially they are complementary, and ACP editor can let an ACP agent use MCP server under editor mandated permissions, right? So there is absolutely no conflict. Essentially, you're just adding communication between the editor and coding agent, which is agnostic of the both. Keep in mind, these are early specs, so it's actively evolving. Expect changes, and there are going to be versioning. At the moment, it's written in Rust. The whole Z IDE is written in Rust. So we'll have to see if the other coding agents plus the editors are going to add support for this or not. Now, another very important thing to consider is the security and authentication aspect. MCP still struggle with that. I haven't really seen much on ACP either. So at the moment, it's only available in Z IDE, which is an open source model. So if you use Claude or Gemini CLI, I think it's a really good coding editor because you can run it for free. They also have their own coding agent. So if you go open a new thread, you can select a number of different models, including some of the open weight models that are running on Ollama on your machine. For example, you can actually see them here. But instead of, I guess, paying for that, I would either use Claude Code or Gemini CLI if you have already subscription. Anyways, do let me know your thoughts of what you think about ACP. I'd highly recommend to at least read about this because this could be as big as MCP. Thanks for watching, and as always, see you in the next one.